Welcome to Conversations with Leaders in Luxury. I'm Greg Furman, founder and chairman of the Luxury Marketing Council. Since 1994, 1,000 luxury brands in more than 40 cities worldwide, some 5,000 luxury brand CEOs and CMOs. Thank you for joining us, and big thanks to our friends at NASDAQ for their continuing patronage and hosting and producing Conversations with Leaders in Luxury. Today, I'm delighted to be with Mickey Alan Khan, who is the editor-in-chief of Luxury Daily. In my opinion, 23 years in the luxury market, the most intelligent reporter, real-time, daily, of trends from a marketing, promotion, and sales and advertising perspective in the world today, really. And Mickey, it's a genius idea. And I thank you for your membership in the council.
Thank you very much, Greg.
And for your support and opportunity to work with you and compliment you on what you've achieved and wish you lots of success going forward.
Absolutely.
Tell us, Mickey, a little bit about your roots. Where'd you grow up? What did you study? What got you into this business?
Great. Thank you, Greg. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I'm a big fan of the Luxury Marketing Council, as you know. And so, as you can imagine, I'm not American. I grew up in India, and I studied banking, but instead went into media. Hindsight
Go
is
figure.
2020.
Right.
Anyways, so one of my earliest gigs was at Advertising Age. So I covered advertising and marketing for South Asia.
As a journalist?
As a journalist. And
so even though you studied banking,
yes,
you kind of slipped into...
I always loved advertising
Yeah.
and marketing. I was a big fan of David Ogilvy.
Sure.
And I think the one book that had the biggest influence in my career is Ogilvy and Advertising.
I give that. I used to teach a course
Yep.
at NYU Stern Graduate School of Business, and it continues to be the most powerful book on what is advertising and media and how it works.
Absolutely, and I still refer to it.
Me too.
And so in '93, I joined Advertising Age. Prior to that, I was an editorial assistant on a local publication called Ad World, and then I was with Ad Age for about 5.5 years. And
in a journalistic capacity.
Yes, absolutely. I was a foreign correspondent. And then I started covering the internet in the mid-'90s. And then somewhere around '98, I decided to move to New York. I used to live in Los Angeles when I was a kid.
I worked as a journalist in LA for a while.
There you go. And so I always had a love for the United States, and obviously I still visit. And in '98 I moved here. In '99 I got a job with a publication called DM News. It's a direct marketing newspaper.
I know it. Yep.
And they launched a publication called iMarketing News, focused on internet marketing. And we covered the heyday.
And this is really early on.
Early on, really early on. And I eventually rose to become editor-in-chief of DM News, and at that point I realized that,
So where are we in time now, year-wise,
so,
roughly?
I think this was 2006 I became editor-in-chief of DM News, and very briefly I joined eMarketer as editor-in-chief, but by then I'd already realized that I wanted to launch my own company. I was in my mid-30s, and I thought that was the right time. I wasn't married at that time, and I thought I could take as many risks as possible with minimal damage. And so I started a publication called Mobile Marketer. I knew that mobile was going to be big. Steve Jobs had just launched the iPhone, and I said there's no publication that covers the mobile advertising and marketing ecosystem. So we launched that, and 2 years later I followed up with Mobile Commerce Daily, which is also the largest mobile commerce publication. So these two are my publications prior to founding Luxury Daily.
And now we're in what year?
This is 2009.
Okay. So now the tidal wave is beginning to build.
At that point, I decided to launch Luxury Daily. There was no research. It was just a gut feel. I felt the luxury market wasn't well served with the news outlets out there. Obviously, the mainstream outlets covered the luxury business, but it was pretty spotty.
If I may, in that same window, by then the council had picked up a pretty good head of steam. So I started the council in '94, '95. And one of the biggest issues that I saw back then that continued up to and continuing past the time when you put a toe in the water with Luxury Daily was that there was no intelligent, very little, even in mainstream media, and what there was like Canada coverage in the New York Times. It was so minimal. And even the ad ages and the traditional marketing publications, whether it be the database community or the ad or the PR community, very few of them actually dove deep from a head of marketing or CEO's perspective and told the case histories of best practices. And I always fantasized from the beginning of the council that I was going to do something like this, but since we're still a two-man band, I never did. So when I discovered you guys, I said genius. And it really was a huge vacuum.
Yes. And that's what I specialize in. I always like launching new products or services. You don't have to wait to meet a need sometimes. You can create one.
Exactly.
And
where sometimes there is such a void that is unseen.
Absolutely.
That when people see what could be done, all of a sudden the void no longer is a void.
Absolutely. And so what we decided to do was I launched Luxury Daily, and I said, let's focus on 4 areas in the luxury business: the marketing, the retailing, the media, and the digital. And obviously the overall strategy, because that's the front end of the business.
Yes.
And I felt that the coverage of luxury was either too laudatory or it was too critical. It was not balanced.
Yeah. No Harvard Business School case studies existed to much of a degree.
Absolutely. And so we launched it in September 2010. And before we launched it, I made sure that I hired some staff to ensure that the site wasn't empty on day one. So we had 300 articles ready.
Right.
And it's been 6.5 years now, almost 7 years. No, actually 6 years, I'm sorry. And we are now at about 200,000 unique users a month.
That's great.
And about 30,000 email subscribers.
And if I may, one of the things that I also commend you on, because I ran a PR business for a while and ran it in the best sense on the backs of really smart Ivy young people who had the writing chops, the strategy chops, but also who were reasonable, who had a lot of hustle, who wanted to get a toehold in the business, and the model is a little bit similar that way.
Yes.
And many of the young people that you've hired, I've known for years and have gone on to do better things.
Absolutely.
And the ones routinely that I've spoken to are fantastic. So however you find them,
well,
you're doing a good job.
You're nothing but your people. And it's like a restaurant. You don't have a product till the chef shows up,
right,
and then you have the waiter serve. And so for us, Luxury Daily is all about the talent that works there. And we take special care in training them. So when we hire somebody, even if that person is really experienced, we give them a 3-month training program. And we appoint a mentor, and we make sure that they're immersed in not only our writing style, but also what luxury stands for and what this industry is supposed to do, not just what it's doing. So we're not just basically reflecting what's happening, we're also shining a light.
Right.
And so today we have readers in 160 countries, and every day we produce about 15 to 18 articles,
right.
Fresh articles.
Yep.
And in a couple of months we'll be changing our business model. Right now we are advertising supported, so we're free, but in a few days we go live with a brand new site, completely retouched and user-friendly, easily searchable, and I think we'll be able to make the proposition that while we've been free so far, it'd be great if our readers support us in this mission, which our job is to improve strategy and business and luxury. And so mid-September to late September, we hope to turn it paid. I'm rolling the dice.
I wish you lots of success with that.
Absolutely. But I feel that the media model has changed.
I have to tell you, sign me up. I think that it has more than proven value. We on our side, from the council perspective, will do absolutely everything to help you take it to market, because there isn't anything out there like you. Nothing.
Thank you.
There are some vague and pale imitators who shall go unnamed, and I think it's got great potential. So
absolutely, and our job is to inform, educate, and stimulate ideas and thinking, and we want to make sure that Luxury Daily survives as an institution. You see, it's not about me. It's about the brand, and it's about the business it covers. And I want to make sure that, you know, we see the writing on the wall. Ads are getting blocked left, right, and center. The nature of advertising itself is changing.
Yeah.
I'm still a firm believer in the separation of church and state.
Absolutely.
I don't like the idea of copy masquerading as
Yes.
advertising masquerading as copy,
Yep.
which I feel is disingenuous, and eventually is going to basically come back to bite all these media brands that are doing that.
Yeah.
So that's where we are today.
That's exciting. How do you see the nature of content changing? Because a lot of organizations have taken a run at pay-to-play content. So
Yes.
in some respect, you are on the cutting edge again in your life after 6 years and some in turning a very viable model with some patronage and online advertising at a point when the nature of content and pay-to-play is changing. And if I may say, where you have sufficient depth to be a unique editorial premise. So how do you see that evolving in terms of how content's going to change and people's hunger to know and willingness to pay?
Well, I think, you know, the edge we have over anybody else is information translated into analysis and knowledge. And there'll always be a hunger for that. The only thing is that given the number of outlets out there and social media, people's attention spans are completely shot,
Yeah.
right? So you've got that one issue there. It's also very easy for anybody to express their opinion, be it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, you know, YouTube, you name it. So we see this as the golden age of content. The question is, if you're in the professional business of producing content, how do you make it sustainable? What kind of revenue models will you apply to it? And so for us, we see, you know, the usual mix of advertising, events, subscriptions. I know that I personally don't like paid content, but most publishers are doing that now. You know, especially in the United States, publishers are going through a very tough time. And they're basically throwing everything at the ceiling and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
But I do feel that everyone has an opinion, and we live in an age where everyone's opinion gets expressed, is heard, and is commented on. So for publications like ours, I'm a little old school, where I believe that we offer news that is unbiased. We'll sway you a little bit one way or the other, depending on the merits of the story, but we will not let our reporters have an editorial voice. That's only reserved for an editorial.
Yeah.
And I do believe that when you read an article from us, you can make a decision that will help you run your business better. So in terms of the content strategy for a lot of these brands out there, I think nothing's fixed. But as I said, this is the best age to produce content.
You know, we've lived on the bringing of intimate content and relationships. Yep. So I compliment you on your event strategy. You do 4 now. Is it 4 you're up to?
Well, I've cut it back to 2.
Okay.
So that's again, you know, we consolidate because we realize that we do our flagship event in January, First Look.
Yes.
And then we do either the Luxury Roundtable or we do the Luxury Retail Summit. So we alternate. And I decided that 4 events was too much to ask from our audience, and 2 events are better.
Yeah, well, the integration of content and community is critical.
Yes.
The other thing that I admire about your approach is that you bring in outsiders that sometimes have a unique perspective that are not necessarily hard news, but also offer a perspective from people in the know, like Bob Schulman and others. Myself have been privileged to be part of that. And when those types of folks are showcased, it's clear that it is opinion but not paid to have the opinion.
Absolutely. I do believe that, you know, you just cannot feed the audience what they think they need to know. You have to basically jolt them sometimes. Right. You have to expose them to new ideas. And, you know, we are not fans of luxury, nor are we cheerleaders. We basically, as I said, we not only reflect what's going on, but we also shine a light. Yeah. And that's a very critical mission for us.
You're like the great British classifiers of the untraveled territories that are shining a light on the behavior of the rare luxury species.
I do feel like I'm a, what is it, Mr. Stanley or?
Mr. Stanley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was two Mr. Stanleys, the Stanley in Livingston
Marcus.
and Mr. Stanley Marcus. How do you think the customer is changing in all of this? The best customer, you know, the 12 million plus globally that have investable assets of $1 million or more.
I think what we're seeing in the world of luxury is an evolution the way the luxury customer views consumption. Pretty much the very rich have the best. They've got the best furniture, the best gadgets, the best cars, jewelry. What they're looking for is similar experiences. Time, as everyone says, is the ultimate luxury. And so they want to make sure that, they have these fabulous one-off experiences with their family or friends or colleagues. And so I think that's the one trend we are seeing in the world of luxury, where experiential luxury is basically taking off.
Yeah.
I also
and multi-generational
multi-generation.
often. The
And
grandfather, the
absolutely.
kids, the grandkids.
Absolutely. And you can see that reflected in hotels campaigns
Yeah.
like Ritz-Carlton has Take Us With You,
Yeah.
photographs, and
Disney.
And so we're seeing that trend there. We're also seeing, and this is, ups and downs. I mean, these are cycles. I mean, everyone's saying that no one's buying that much anymore. Well, in 5 years' time, you'll see a return to the market there. What the very rich want is very soft materials, hushed noise, pastel tones. They feel that they've paid their dues, and that they want to focus on what really matters. So everything else that they buy has to aid in that particular focus for them. So that love of, or that indulgence of the best that luxury has to offer will never change. And I'm fairly confident that even if we have a slight downturn, luxury brands that think long term will be resilient, and basically they'll hang on to those customers.
Yeah. The rich will always be with us.
Absolutely.
The impact of the millennials, the
Yes.
young folks, however we define it, 86 million versus 80 million boomers, let's say 24 through 39. How's that changing things in terms of buying and consumption of information?
Well, that's an interesting question, because if you think of the typical millennial, you don't associate the Silicon Valley rich.
Right.
Think about them, right? Think about Mark Zuckerberg. The guy is what, $45 billion worth. He wears a t-shirt, the same gray t-shirt every day, and jeans, right? Steve Jobs was worth billions of dollars, wore a turtleneck, a mock turtleneck, and jeans. So for them, that itself is the identity, where they say that we're only going to spend a few $100s on our clothes. But if you look into their homes, that's where the real expenditure is. If you look into their vacations, they indulge
Travel
themselves.
the fastest growing segment, and home close second these
Absolutely.
days.
And you look at the jets, look at their cars. For men, the watches. So you have to gear your consumption to where these guys and women are focusing.
Yep.
They don't want to come across. They don't want to wear suits, right? And so I think I'm one of the few dinosaurs left. But I don't come into this category, right? I'm Gen X.
Right.
Everyone's forgotten about us.
Right.
But what I feel is that when you're targeting the young, keep in mind they're looking for experiences. They're looking for something that makes them feel good about the environment, sustainable. They want to make sure they're giving back to society. Maybe not as much as the boomers are, but they'll enter that phase a little later on. You have to train them to be more philanthropic. But they're here at this point in life where they're just getting to learn what it means to be rich.
The food chain, yeah.
Absolutely. So, sometimes I feel that they need training in how to handle their money. And I think, that's a big opportunity for wealth managers to target that market too.
Do you see the conventional wisdom that the millennials buy in a socially conscious way? Meaning, if a brand is inappropriate in their labor practices or their manufacture practices, that the millennials will walk away from that brand, let's say it's apparel, in favor of a brand that is more so, more favorable.
Absolutely, you hit it on the nail, because the thing is that what we're seeing with millennials is they have a conscience, and they're exercising that conscience. You see that reflected in the manufacturers, right? They'll stress their sustainability credentials. Kering has a whole bunch of initiatives. LVMH has a whole bunch of initiatives giving back to society. The irony is that the luxury industry has always been about sustainability, because
Yes.
when you buy, say, a leather handbag,
A classic manufactured.
exactly, okay? Well, what you're doing is, firstly, you have limited supply, and then you hang on to that bag for decades.
That's
So
true.
it's not disposable fashion you're talking about.
That's right.
So when you talk about high-end luxury, when you buy a Rolls Royce, you hang on to that.
Yep.
When you buy a Bentley, you hang on
Right.
to that. Same thing with homes, you know, and obviously there is the exception to the rule, but I do feel that youngsters today, they've seen what their parents went through, and the boomers were a little more materialistic in their approach, and obviously the millennials have reacted to that. But look, everybody starts out as a Democrat when they're in college. When they start earning,
Right.
they become Republican,
Right.
because you have to pay taxes, right? I see that evolution too. Today's millennial is going to be a parent tomorrow, is going to be responsible for college bills and this and that. And so I do feel that they will also evolve in the way of thinking.
You know, when you talk to people whose practice is about the study of millennials, they say it's a three-part community of 86 million young
Yes.
people. A third have gone back to school hoping that the boomers are going to retire and then they can get some jobs. A third are gainfully employed hoping the boomers are going to retire so that they can move up the food chain. And the interesting third is the third that can't afford to go back to school for an MBA, cannot get a job, and are becoming the new entrepreneurs, but not just in web-related services, but in reinventing new apps, products, and services, pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps. And that, many people are saying, is going to be the richest group, part of the millennials.
Absolutely.
Do you see that happen?
Absolutely, and but we also see, you know, this transfer of wealth. I mean, the silent generation passing it on to the baby boomers, and now the first baby boomers already turned 70.
That's right.
Right. So you're going to see in the next 10 years a major transfer in wealth from that generation to the early Gen X and the Gen Y/millennials. What I do see happening is the realities of the market have changed. So the millennials can't take anything for granted, because we live in a society where business models change every 2 or 3 years. So whatever they're doing, they have to make sure that they have the ability to reinvent themselves. And when it comes to wealthy millennials, as long as they have common sense and they've got good advisors and they're talented, I think you know, this generation will pretty much turn out to be the smartest out of the last 4 generations we've seen.
Traditionally, the luxury brands in our time, and maybe up right until the point in time when you founded in 2010 Luxury Daily, had a "we tell them what to wear" attitude.
Yes.
It was kind of like, we are the guardians of the definition of luxury. Mr. Stanley Marcus, being the odd man out, who said luxury is the best that the mind of man can imagine and the hand of man create. So it's quality and classic, something that you can carry on and continue with. Do you think how do you feel about the level of packaged goods style marketing among the luxury brands has increased? Have you seen that get more sensitive to classic marketing and a little less "we tell them what to wear" from a marketing perspective?
Well, that's a very tricky slope, because
Yeah,
you know,
it is. It
look,
is indeed.
they're coming to you because you're an authority in that particular line,
Yep.
right? So if you're going to say Savile Row, you don't want to tell the tailor there that this is how I want my suit stitched.
Right.
You are going there for the Savile Row style.
Yes.
When you're buying something from Hermes, you're buying into what Hermes stands for. And I think that's very critical for luxury brands to keep in mind. While you might listen to your customers, but they're coming to you because you're the authority in that space. Never lose sight of that fact.
Yeah, yeah.
I believe the brand should still be in control. They should have the back and forth with the customer, but you should not give the customer what they want, because I'll give an example, right? When Henry Ford was asked about his cars, so he said that if I had asked people what they wanted was a faster horse carriage. And same thing, Steve Jobs paraphrased that, and he said, if I had asked people for their feedback, what we'd had is a faster typewriter.
Right.
And not the Mac line of computers, right? So I do feel that you have to assert your credentials, you have to stress your heritage, you have to make your case for why your product or service will enhance the customer's lives, but you also have to be willing to work with the customer to listen to them. But I think at no time should a luxury brand cede their positioning or cede control of what the brand stands for.
Do you think that brands from a classic packaged goods marketing standpoint, given what you've said, have become more savvy from a marketing standpoint?
I think yes, absolutely. What we're seeing is an explosion in the use of digital tactics and strategies. We see luxury brands are one of the most deft users of social media platforms. And to see a Chanel Twitter feed or a Facebook page is just simply mind-boggling. Think about the rich content and the videos and the immersive experiences.
Yep.
15 years ago, you never had this. You just had a print ad, you had some billboards out there, and you had a few in-store experiences. Today, in addition to all of those things, you also got digital media, you've got email marketing, you've got search, you've got online, mobile, apps, social. So I think today's luxury marketers, while they've been slow compared to the non-luxury brands out there, I think they've pretty much caught up. They're conservative because you don't want to come across as too familiar.
Yeah,
So
or be on the bleeding edge.
Absolutely. There has to be, just like royalty, there has to be some mystique with luxury.
Yeah.
You can't let in too much sunlight.
That's a great note on which to end the business discussion. On a personal note, what's your personal definition of luxury, one? And two, when you're not running this enterprise and launching this new concept, which I wish you great success with, what do you do to decompress and find your center?
Excellent. So to tackle the first question, we define luxury in four terms. I mean, basically there are four constituents to luxury. First, it has to be extremely rare or limited distribution. Second, craftsmanship or exquisite service. Third, high perceived value. And fourth, authenticity. The combination of these four basically can make a luxury brand or service. And that's how we judge stories. You know, there are many brands out there that want to get into luxury daily, but if they don't meet
Those
three or four of
criteria.
these criteria, they're not in.
And personally for you, when you say luxury, what personally for you, when you say luxury from your own context, I take one of my nephews wilderness canoeing to northern Ontario, and there couldn't be anything more primitive, but for me, no technology, it's a great luxury. For you personally, what is luxury?
I think pretty much what you view as luxury is time with family.
Yeah.
I think that's very important because you don't know if you're going to be around the next day, right? So what you have is what you have now. And the relationships you have with your family, be it my wife or my son, my parents, my sisters, my nieces, nephews. So to me, that's very important. And I do believe that, you know, we live in a beautiful era. I FaceTime with my family almost every day. Even if I'm traveling, I see my son pretty much every day.
Right.
So to me, that's the beauty of the world we live in, that, you know, this is almost, you know, a dream where, you know, even if you're remote, you can still interact with your family. So to me, that's luxury, interaction with family.
Thank you, Mickey. Can't remember an interview that I enjoyed more. Thank you all for joining us and NASDAQ for their help with production. See you next time at Conversations with Leaders in Luxury.